and gentlemen, put your hands together for Miss Evans. What's her name again?
Polina Smith.
Polina Smith! Everyone, Polina Smith, please. Thank you so much, Dr. Schmidt, for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. Yes, Polina, it's so lovely. So I heard that you were friends with Mr. Maupin, yes? I was just wondering if you could tell us maybe a little bit about how you met him and whatnot. Sure, Dr. Schmidt, I'd be happy to do that. So when I first moved to the city a couple years ago, I was working as a personal trainer at UCSF. It was my first job, and my manager said, there's some older man here who's looking for a personal trainer. Would you be interested? And I said, sure. And I met with Mr. Maupin, or Armistead, who I had no idea who he was, and we were just chatting while he's on the elliptical. And I said, oh, what do you do for a living? And he said, I'm a writer. And I kind of rolled my eyes because everyone in San Francisco is a writer. Oh, great. And then the guy on the elliptical next to him goes, and a really great writer. And I was like, And then I started seeing Armistead quite a bit. And over the first month or 2 months, he started telling these extraordinary stories about when he was hanging out with Rock Hudson and when he was partying with people from Lord of the Rings, and he's flying to all these fancy parties, and he went to the Oscars and his movies and the interviews and PBS, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like who is this like old friendly man who's so lovely? So I go home and I Wikipedia him, and I'm like, holy shit, this is the person I'm hanging out with. But we just became really good friends through this time because he's just a really, really lovely, incredible individual. Thank you, Miss Smith. That's quite fascinating. Maybe you could introduce me sometime to Mr. Maupin. I was also wondering, in the book, Mr. Maupin writes about you and or a girl named Shauna and a boy named Otto, and they seem to have a little love affair. Do you have anything to say about this? Well, yes. When I started training Mr. Maupin, I was going to clown school at the Circus Center, and I met a wonderful young man named Christopher, and we fell in love at the time, and I would tell Miss Armistead often about my little romance, which was very exciting, and he ended up coming to a clown show and seeing Christopher perform, and ended up writing Christopher into the book and renamed him Otto. That's quite fascinating, Miss Smith. I actually have a passage here that I would like you to read, and you'll tell me how accurate this is, okay? Okay. Otto was the real deal. He approached his craft with a dignity that bordered on the sacramental, especially when he made his rounds at schools and nursing homes. She respected him for his charity work and admired his expertise with unicycles and bowling pins, and generally found him to be sweet and a great deal of fun in the sack. But she never started taking him seriously, much less gazed into his heart until she met Sammy. Miss Smith, could you please tell us about this Sammy character? Well, Christopher did this incredible routine with a monkey puppet, and his monkey puppet was named Clarence, but in the book it's go by Sammy. And I always thought Christopher was cool, but the first time I saw him do his act with the monkey puppet, I was like, oh my god, and my heart just melted, and I told Armistead about that, and that's how Shauna ends up falling in love with Christopher. Thank you. Now, Miss Smith, it doesn't seem to work out between Shauna and Christopher in the end. They aren't together, and would you have anything to comment about that? Well, yes. I remember one day I said to Armistead, Armistead, are Shauna and Otto going to get married in the end, while he was writing the book and telling me about it? And he said, well, you tell me, Polina. And then a couple months later, Christopher and I broke up. Wonderful, we're still great friends. He's awesome. And I said, Armistead, what happens in the end? Do they get together? Do they stay together? And he says, you already know, Polina. You already know what happens. And in the book, they do go their separate ways, but very amicably. Thank you, Miss Smith. Now, just one last question before we go on with the show. Recently, the New York Times wrote an article about Armistead Maupin and the upcoming Tales of the City musical coming up next weekend, and he was quoted in the last paragraph as saying, I have a 25-year-old girl trainer who tells me stories about what's going down at the multi-orgasmic workshop, said Mr. Maupin, 66, and still living in San Francisco with his husband, Christopher Turner. The city doesn't feel any different at all. Miss Smith, would you like to comment on this multi-orgasmic or workshop? Actually, Dr. Schmidt, I think I'd rather not. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us, Polina. Thank you all. And now let us go on with the show. Thomas John, ladies and gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
Yay.